down to the customer. But what the legislation does provide scope for the prices and contracts to be changed. But it's permissive, it doesn't require them to be invoiced.
A lot of these things are already underway before this was released. It could go on for about 2 years. So.
Well, just on the point where somebody was saying that if somebody's on a payments basis and even if the invoice is before the 1st of October, if they've paid it after the 1st of October, it'll be at a higher rate, but as I say, there is an adjustment mechanism which reflects the difference between debtors and creditors, and to effectively give you compensation for the difference in the two GST rates.
Just say that again, because I don't think that quite came out right. So if you have a September invoice that would normally be paid on the 20th of the month following, they will pay it on the face value of that invoice, which is 12.5%.
No, they would pay. No, if the payment
invoiced at 12.5%.
So it's invoiced at 12.5%.
Before October.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's sitting in your debtors.
Yeah. But then on the return, it would show up in the return after the 1st of October, right?
No, we get it.
But it will be at the higher rate. But there would be an adjustment.
No, that's not quite right. No, you're incorrect. So because it's in both people's system as the 30th of September invoice date, it's going to be billed at the lower rate and payable at the lower rate, regardless of when it's paid.
But it's payable by the other person who pays you. They're only paying it 12.5%. But
no, it's in their system. It's going to be returned at the 30th of September in their system as well on the invoice date.
I would presume though that most people in our business are on accruals based on cash.
It doesn't matter about the date of cash transfer, it's the actual invoice date.
I think the best one is to take a note of that and just email your response back. Carry on.
I think it is a major question, but very well.
Yeah, in terms of that
because that was one of the examples we put out to get people along to hear from the horse's mouth what goes with this. So, I mean, the market forces as well, and obviously, as merchants want to capitalise on the legal opportunity. If somebody was going to buy a $100,000 trailer powerboat and they're really close to signing up, and they know that in October they're going to pay 15%, and 30th of September they're going to pay 12.5%. But the boat can't be delivered physically until the 3rd week in October because the builder physically can't finish that many boats in time.
No.
So the dealer would legitimately would say, well, you paid $100,000 on the 30th of September, and I'll put a DPR on or whatever boat to make sure your funds are all looked after. So you paid him 12.5% GST. We'll deliver the boat to you in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah.
Is that all okay?
Well, I think.
No, it can't.
Well, I mean, it depends upon whether that meets the time of supply rules.
You're getting it from different
people. If
you're getting a boat from, say, Buccaneer and Yamaha all after that date, it's not good.
So the GST Act, Peter, would suggest that if it's in reasonable time of could that forgetting the GST change, is that about right? Would you pay for a car and take delivery 3 weeks later from the car place? Yes, possibly. So the Act would allow you to make that. But it would become avoidance if you took a payment for the 2012 model Ford car in 2000, a year and a half. It would be considered avoidance.
Yeah, that's a more extreme example.
Yeah, that's knowing what that reasonable period is.
They would look at the industry and say, is that normal for something to take that long to construct? That's how they would. Could I ask Carolyn, we use a trustee company by the name of Trustees Executors, and they seem through some legislation to have a varying GST rate, which appeared to come in at 10%. I don't know if that's your field but because it was a financial service provider or something comparable.
Is that just in terms of zero rating for financial services, perhaps?
It wasn't a 0, but it was 10. It comes in on the invoice at 10.
Oh, okay. I've heard ones for rest homes at different rates, and the one where there's partially accommodation, private accommodation, hotel accommodation, or beyond the hotel accommodation, that's the rate of 7.5, which goes up to 9. And I've heard of other ones for rest homes that's 10.25.
I don't know if there's the opportunity. I know my sector of the industry uses statutory supervisors quite regularly, and we have this anomaly. It's never really been explained. We just accept them on their face value. And
so, yeah, it seems strange. Unless they've got some mix of zero rated and non-zero rated supplies, and it's averaging the rate. That's what I think it might be, but we can double check on that.
That would be great.
I think someone had a question around depreciation and loading and how that might work. For example, if you were, excuse my ignorance, installing a new engine into a launch or something like that, how does the load, and that sort of cross the period around budget date in terms of how the loading rules might apply? You know, do you get the loading on the new engine, will the customer get the loading on the new engine or not, and how does that work? So what would happen is someone owned their launch and they're in business up until prior to budget day, they would get the accelerated extra 20% deductions. If you're installing a new engine post that date, the launch itself would get the accelerated rate, but the new engine would be treated as a separate asset, and that would not get the extra 20% loading. You'd still get depreciation, but just not at the accelerated rate.
So, Carolyn, can I just expand on that question? We've got a question from one of our members that couldn't join us today, and I'll just read out from his emails. Does this new change affect all builders marketing to individuals who will keep their boats in charter? As the government is changing depreciation laws for machinery and plant, charter boats' engines are sometimes depreciated separately. Is the new rates going to affect them strictly manufacturing machinery and plants only? This sort of ties in with the question you just covered.
In terms of loading, that basically applied to all plant and equipment. It wasn't sort of specific categories, so it will impact any new plant and equipment that is purchased after budget date will no longer get that extra 20% loader.
What about fixed assets work in progress?
Work in progress?
Yeah. So
the legislation covers binding contracts that were entered into for construction or acquisition prior to budget date. They still get the old rules, the loading, so that does cover those contracts over that period.
What about internal work though? We build a lot of our own fixed assets.
Let's write up some contracts pretty quick.
Too late.
I'd have to check the legislation. I know it talks about binding contracts. I don't think it might talk about assets in construction, but I'd have to double check that and just get back to you. I don't want to say and find we didn't cover that. So we definitely covered contracts, but I don't know about that internal funding.
Sorry, one more question in relation to that loading. What about if we've ordered some new equipment but not had it delivered yet?
Presumably,
we have an invoice but we haven't received it.
I would have said that, so a binding, should be a binding contract.
As long as you order it before the 21st of May.
Yeah.
Fine.
And if that's your normal kind of commercial arrangement, that would be a binding agreement, then that should be fine.
Just getting away from all that, get back to the building to the 50 years life.
Yeah.
If you, a brand new building, well built, should last 50 years, okay?
Yeah, that's what the building legislation says.
If you buy a building's 100 years old already, what's the chance of it lasting another 50? Pretty slim.
Yeah, and the way that...
It's going to have to be demolished sometime in the next 50 years, so why would there be depreciation on that?
The way that the legislation works is that it's the normal estimated useful life for that category of building. So if in your case, if you happen to buy a building, after 80 years, there's a question as to, okay, is the life of this building only 20 years? The way the rules work is to say for general buildings, it's greater than 50 years. It doesn't matter when in the stage of its life you actually acquire it. It's of the category of a long-lived building, and so you won't get building depreciation. What the government and policy houses has said is that, on the data we have on New Zealand buildings, they don't seem to decline in value on average. It's like buying a share in a company that's like a capital asset. It's not seen as going down in value, so you shouldn't get a tax deduction. You still get your repairs and maintenance if you maintain that building for its life, and that's an immediate deduction. And if you beg your pardon?
Sorry. Yes.